Our mission is to uphold the family values, faith, traditions, and so forth. We do this by getting conservative candidates elected. Simple mission, simple execution. Next. This is for those of you who haven't been here before. We fund our activities with our members who pay monthly dues or with some envelopes that are laying around. If you don't see one, the nice folks at the signing table have some. And I'm going to talk about prior meetings because if you haven't been here before, it's kind of nice to know what we do, how we do it, and you may want to get on, if nothing else, get on the email list. We had Ellen Owens, our tax assessor collector. We had the head of Moms for Liberty, Kimberly Fletcher, head of Moms for America, Donald Trump's Texas campaign director, and so forth. Had a great lineup in June, July, and August. Next. We've had Congressman Michael Cloud, Alan West, Don Huffines, and this is not a prior meeting yet, but it will be tonight. And Senator Mayes Middleton next. And upcoming meetings, we have a great lineup coming up. Cindy Castilla, Texas Eagle Forum president, Grassroots America president, Jeremy Stories, a local pastor, and the SREC rep, and Julie Pickering with the State Board of Education. We're going to talk about our children. Rick Green, founder and president of Patriot Academy. Those are upcoming. If you want to be on the list to know what's coming up and so you don't miss the meetings, just go on the website and sign up. Next. And now we have Mr. Mayes Middleton next. I'll put a few bullets. He served 2 terms in the House of Reps before he became a senator. He was the chairman of the Texas House Freedom Caucus. And more importantly to us, not that those weren't important, I'm sorry. Has been ranked by a number of organizations as one of the top most conservative members of the legislature. He's the vice chairman of a number of committees. He's on Senate committees, and with that, Mr. Senator Mayes Middleton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for having me tonight. What an awesome group of patriots here. Who's excited about what happened this past November the 5th? It's more than morning in America. The patriots are taking this country back, and we have taken this state back. And I know in Bastrop County, y'all know the real consequences of communism because y'all are living next to a county like that, Travis County, right? So y'all live that every single day. But look, Macy and I, we're blessed to have 4 little ones. Connor, Christian, Matthew, and Martha Ann, our baby's little girl. She's 3 years old. She's definitely got me around her little finger. There's no doubt about that. But, those 4 kids are my daily reminder of what we're fighting for because we don't have another Texas to move to. This is it, right here, right now. And I think those election results on November the 5th showed us we demand and we expect boldness in leadership. That's why Donald Trump won. That's why he won. Because we all know he will fight for us, and he will not relent. He will not give in. He will not go from a level 10 to a 5 no matter what. He's going to be a level 10 all the time, and that's why we love him. And look, at the end of the day, this is about those conservative values that we all share here. And look, a little bit my story. So I first ran for the House in 2017. And that was against an incumbent who was not living up to his conservative values, right? So I decided to run against him, right? I was tired of complaining about it, so I did something about it. I ended up winning, beating him. He was definitely not A+. He's more like a C or D, probably more like a F on most days. But that's what this is about too, right? Because we stand up for those convictions of faith and family and freedom. And if you don't do something about them, and if you don't have an elected official putting them into action, that's the same as not believing in them at all, right? And, I continued that, ran for the Senate later on, and actually in all these years I've been ranked as number 1 most conservative member by Club for Growth when I was in the House, now number 1 in the Senate. And I'll tell you, that's really not all that hard to do. You just do what you said you were going to do when you ran for office, right? That's what that's about. And, in this fight for our future, it really is about our kids, like I mentioned earlier, because the left is after our kids. We've seen that again and again. Julie Pickering, I was so glad to see that she's speaking Moms for Liberty, because that's really where this starts for them. And you've seen how far the left is willing to go. Like, so last session, I was the author of the Save Women's Sports Act, which kicks men out of women's college sports. I mean, it's sad we have to pass that, right? I mean, 10 years ago, people would have laughed at us, but this is how far they're willing to go, right? They're willing to steal victory, athletic scholarships, hard-earned spots on teams, and force their way into women's locker rooms. All for what? It's unfair. It's wrong. Riley Gaines was up in committee last session testifying for that bill, telling some of the stories about how she first became aware of that. It was actually Will Thomas, Westlake High swimmer, actually. I don't know if y'all know that. So that was a Westlake guy that was in Riley's women's locker room, naked, by the way. And she had to be exposed to that. And so she decided that it was going to be a calling of hers to go stop this and say, no, this is wrong. This is not common sense, and this shouldn't be happening in America. And we stood up in a big way for fairness in women's sports last session, passed the Save Women's Sports Act. But it doesn't stop there. You know, you think about with our kids in education as well, right? I've always been a believer in school choice because, look, at the end of the day, our rights as parents are from God and not government. And the final say in a child's education should be parents and not the government. And that's all it is about right now. School choice is just that simple decision. Because right now, the only say in how that money is spent is government. And we're just giving parents a say. We're giving your neighbors, your friends, people that live on your street, and saying, look, as a mom and a dad, we trust you. And we trust these decisions that you're going to make. So, you know, I mean, the next time you see, like, y'all seen in kindergarten, Austin ISD made kids celebrate Pride Week. Did y'all see that? They made them write their name on a pride flag. What is a single mom supposed to do about that? Who can't afford private school tuition, right? So now, with school choice, she has an option to say, look, the school does not represent my values. They're going against what's right. They're endangering my child. And people can vote with their feet. And you know, that was one of my first issues I got involved in 2016, actually, before I ever got elected to office, because I couldn't understand why in Texas, of all places, we weren't able to pass school choice for every child. And you know, I went to those committee hearings. I was a conservative activist before. I was on the board of Texas Public Policy Foundation. I don't know if y'all know that group. And then there was another one called Empower Texans. I was on that board as well at that time in 2016. But I saw why when I went to committee. So I would see moms and dads come and testify for the school choice bill. And y'all all know how difficult that is, right? Because you don't know what time the bill is going to come up. You take all day off work. No one's paying you. No one was paying these moms and dads I'm talking about. And they would go and say, give my child this chance. Give me this chance. The school that my child is in is not working right now for them. Please help me. I can't afford private school. I can't afford to homeschool. And then right after that mom, single mom or dad testified, guess who testified against the school choice bill? Taxpayer-funded lobbyists that were paid with your own school property taxes. And it gets worse than that. It gets worse than that. So that same taxpayer-funded lobby group that testified against the school choice bill, you know what else they testified against? The Women's Privacy Act. So they literally lobbied with your school tax dollars to get men into restrooms, locker rooms, and showers. That's what they're doing with your school tax dollars. And not only that, you know, you couldn't think it'd get worse. It does get worse, actually. TASB, which is Texas Association of School Boards, the taxpayer-funded lobbying group, they actually invited transgender students in to train school boards on gender pronouns. They did that with your tax dollars. And it's not just them. You know, taxpayer-funded lobbyists have opposed border security. You know, HB4, SB4, that's the strongest anti-illegal immigration law we've ever passed, really anywhere in America. They testified against it with your tax dollars. Election integrity, that's another one, really important, right? It's common sense to have fair elections, isn't it, right? Well, unfortunately, to taxpayer-funded lobbyists, it's not. So they testified against the bill that required citizenship verification of our voter rolls. So you've kind of got to ask, okay, if they're lobbying for an open border, you know, against our strongest border security law, and then they're also lobbying against, you know, verification of our voter rolls, who are they really protecting in all of that? I don't think it's us. I don't think it's taxpayers. And then so many other things have been difficult to pass, like property tax relief and reform. I get the question all the time, well, why is that so hard to do? Why is that so hard to put into law? Well, a lot of the reason why is the taxpayer-funded lobbyists that are testifying and lobbying against it with your own tax dollars. And that is why every single session, the first bill that I always file is the ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. And we've got to end this unethical and frankly corrupt practice where parents and taxpayers' own dollars are being used to lobby against them. And we got to finish the job because I had that bill on the floor my first session in the House, and I got it on the floor, which was really hard to do as a freshman. Little intimidating, but I'll tell you the gallery, so the House gallery above the floor, when that bill was up for a vote, that gallery was full of taxpayer-funded lobbyists. And when the bell rang and I only got 58 votes, you need 76 to pass, they cheered. And you know what? That's the voice of the Austin Swamp. And next session, we're going to pass the ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. And I'll tell you why. One of the most important reasons is because of the hard work you have done here. The patriots in this room, we had about 20 that voted against the ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying, Republicans, 20 Republicans. It was also about that many, 21, that voted against school choice. Well, of that 21 that voted against school choice, only 7 are coming back. 7. That's it. And not only that, you saw the sour grapes where conservatives won the primary, and they defeated the ones that were against our grassroots conservative priorities like school choice and so many other things. And they said, well, they can't win the general. Oh, you may have won the primary, but you can't win the general. I don't think so. Not only did no Republican that won those primaries lose, we all won. We picked up 3 more seats this past November the 5th. So we added 3 votes for these bills. Denise Villalobos down in Corpus, Nueces County, she's going to be a new Texas House member, supports school choice. Don McLaughlin out of Uvalde supports school choice, and the biggest victory of them all, and I'm pretty sure Elon Musk voted for him because this is Cameron County, Adam Hinojosa, our newest Republican member of the Texas Senate. That makes 20 out of 31 Republicans now we've got in your Texas Senate, thanks to that incredible turnout we had. And it's also a testament to Donald Trump and what he stands for and what he fights for, because Hidalgo County, for example, voted 60% for Hillary Clinton, plus 60, right? Hillary won it by 60 points. Well, guess what? This time Donald Trump won it by 14 points. That is a 74-point swing. 74 points, amazing. Amazing work. But it shows you people are sick and tired of the left's war on common sense, and that's what it is. It is a war against common sense by the left and the progressive socialists and the woke mind virus people and all the ones that are against the things that really this country was founded on and this state was founded on. One of the things that's important to me, and Julie Pickering, who, she's going to come speak to y'all later, but we've got to put God back in government here at the end. We've got to do that. And, the atheists won that fight in the 60s, right? And it was basically what always happens, where a small group of people on the left take it away for the rest of us. That's how they work on the left. So this session, I'm going to refile my putting prayer back in public school. We passed that in the Senate last session, and it did not make it through the House. So hopefully this time, with a new conservative House, we will get that bill done, and we will restore a period of prayer and Bible reading during school hours in our public schools and put God back in government and get that done. And that's why I also passed the chaplain's bill too last session. I don't know if y'all have heard about that one, but we did get that done. That is law now, and it allows public schools to hire chaplains in K-12, just like police, fire, our military, our hospitals have chaplains. Why shouldn't our K-12 public schools as well? Something else that's really important to all of us is stopping this Green New Deal Trump calls it the Green New Scam because he says it's not a deal for anyone. And he's right. It's not a deal for anyone. And we've got to protect and defend those oil and gas jobs that have done so much for our great state of Texas, and protect and defend our energy independence too. Why on earth would we become dependent on rare earth minerals from China or oil from countries that hate us? You know, we live on the east end of the island in Galveston, and I can see all the movements out of the Houston Ship Channel, so all the tankers, and you know, they're real low in the water when they're full of product, petrochemicals. And I tell my 3 boys, I say, look, that is America and that is Texas taking money from countries that hate us when those tankers go out, because they have to buy our product. And we need to do more of that, not less, right? And these wind farms, you know, I also filed the bill to prohibit Joe Biden's boondoggle offshore wind farm. I don't know if y'all saw that in the news. He was trying to put it off the coast of Texas, you know, as off like maybe 500 square miles of wind farm, something obscene and ridiculous that we were all going to have to pay for. So I filed the bill to ban that and prohibit it. But, you know, we're going to have a lot of extra wind turbine blades right after I think Trump is done doing what he needs to do here. And, you know, we're also going to be building the wall, finally, right? We're going to finish the wall. We're going to get that done and end this illegal immigration invasion that we're under right now, and finally begin to deport these people that have come here illegally. He will get that done. Donald Trump will. But, you know, we've got to figure out what to do with those wind turbine blades. So I'm going to propose that we use the old wind turbine blades to finish the wall. Put those in along the river. And I'll say, for the first time in your lives and all of our lives, the left is going to oppose recycling. You know, they're not going to be for that. So we got to get that done next session. And, you know, property tax reform and relief, you know, very important. To me, that's rent to the government for your own home. But one thing I want to ask the federal government to do, because we've had to step in their position and do their job for them with border security, right? That's what Texas has been doing. We've been doing what the federal government has failed to do, and it's cost us about $13 billion so far. You should all be mad at that number. That is wrong. We should not have had to do that, but I want a refund for that. They need to pay us back for that. And that money should go to you, because government doesn't have any money. It's all taxpayer money. And that needs to go to property tax relief. And lower your property taxes, because this is money that we would have had as surplus, and surplus is not government surplus, it's your surplus. So we need to make sure that we refund that to you, the taxpayer. But look, we have a lot of fights ahead of us, and we know Donald Trump is going to go fight for us on the federal level, but we have to fight here locally too. And it doesn't mean that we have to have some giant, huge army that's bigger than the other side. You know, they didn't have that when they were signing the Declaration of Independence, right? It wasn't very many people that did that, but they had the conviction in their heart to go fight and go win these battles for our God-granted freedoms. And Texas is founded on the same thing. You know, I've got San Jacinto in the district. That's where we won our freedom on April the 21st, 1836. And you think about what they were facing, right? So everyone had just died at the Alamo. Everyone had just been slaughtered at Goliad. And not a month later, they're going out there on the battlefield of San Jacinto. You know, everyone had just been killed less than a month before. They did not hesitate. They did not flinch, because they have that persistence and that grit that we all have today to go fight for those values. And that's what we're founded on here in Texas. And that's why I know at the end of the day, we will win, because we have the persistence and the grit of our values, and boldly lead too, because that is something you need to ask of your leaders as well. We expect boldness, right? I mean, we have had this opportunity where there has been a mandate from the voters of this great state to say, look, we want to get this done, right? We want to take our country back. We want to take it back. And that is up to us to do together. And I'm confident we will get that done together, thanks to patriots in this room here today. And we have a lot of great allies in that fight, from our governor to our lieutenant governor to our attorney general, Ken Paxton, and your state senator as well. Charles Schwertner has been instrumental in helping me in these bills in your Texas Senate. And he just filed a bill today, actually, to stop the UN, UNESCO, and World Health Organization agenda and prohibit the state of Texas from following any mandate from any out-of-country entity. So hugely important to get done. But I want to thank y'all for having me here tonight. God bless you and God bless the great state of Texas, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. The Trump hat.
What are you doing with
Well, the great news is he does not run the Texas Senate. So, this is coming up really soon, and I was happy to see that almost 50 members, right? So there are 88 Republicans now. There were 86, I think, before the elections. We're at 88 now. Over half signed the pledge to ban Democrat chairs, which we have no more Democrat chairs in the Texas Senate, by the way, and implement and pass our Republican Party of Texas legislative priorities. So my last session in the House, I voted to ban Democrat chairs with Brian Slayton. And there weren't a whole lot of us at the time that did that, but it's the right thing to do. They don't give us half of what we want when they're in charge. Why should we give them half of what they want and put them in charge of committees in order to kill our Republican bills? This doesn't make any sense.
So Donald Trump has made it very clear that they're ready to move out everyone who moved here illegally. Is there any talk about the state of Texas essentially having a border czar to help facilitate and expedite that process the second that he's in office and Tom Homan is in his position as well? Because we have so many different agencies within our own state that have to collaborate to make that happen, and not everybody always plays well in the sandbox.
They're definitely going to work with Operation Lone Star, which has worked extremely well. I've been down there in Del Rio and Eagle Pass. I went to Shelby Park and saw it working firsthand. Actually, when we drove in the gate, they checked my ID to make sure that I didn't work for the federal government, because they knew the federal government would come in there and try to tear down the barbed wire, and so they literally locked out the federal government from Shelby Park. But look, I'll tell you something really important that's about to go back into effect, is the ban on sanctuary cities. Yeah. We did that, we passed that in 2017, and under Joe Biden, we couldn't do anything with it because you turn them over to ICE and Border Patrol, they let them go, catch and release, right? Okay, well, that's about to change. So we're going to have our U.S. attorneys back. We're going to have our ICE detainers back. We're going to have deportations. So please help us watch on the local level. If there's any county, city not enforcing our anti-illegal immigration laws and becoming a sanctuary city, whether by saying so or by practice, right? That's also under the law we passed last session, I believe, prosecutorial abuse of discretion. Because we passed that last session to prevent rogue DAs from not following our laws. And that is not following our laws if you're not enforcing our laws against illegal immigration, right? And that makes them eligible to be removed from office if they won't do it. So need your help to make sure that that is happening like it's supposed to. And Operation Lone Star will be working with the new Trump administration to make sure these things happen the way that they're supposed to. I know it's just getting off the ground now. They need to build out the administration, but God willing, we're going to get a quick start to that because we need it.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for this opportunity. So my question was especially around bringing back the prayer and the Bible to the public schools, and I'm very excited to hear about that. I'm a Christian, like from India, and I heard so many great things about America during that time, but I was mostly on the eastern side, which I was disappointed, and me and my husband had to spend through our noses to send our only child to a Christian school where, he could have that fellowship openly. So glad to know about that. But my son is now in college, but of course, every generation has its own challenges. But my question specifically was, even if that bill passes, that's great. I will be also very happy. But as you can see, this day and age, a lot of other cultures are also in play, right? So, and I also heard when I was in East Coast that there were some school districts where satanic religion, they wanted their own program after school. So I'm not going to that extent, but say some Muslim religion or Hindu religion. What if they also want to have those kind of stuff? Is there a way to, I don't need an answer for that, but I'm sure the leaders
right.
are.
Well, it's prayer and Bible reading, first of all. And the good news is there is no accredited satanic school. And thank goodness, and there never will be. Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, this is going to give parents the chance at a Christian education through school choice, and then we can also put Bible reading and prayer back in our public schools. And this was made possible because of President Trump's Supreme Court appointments, right? So they overturned the old, y'all have heard separation of church and state, right? That's a phony doctrine that's not in our Constitution. It's fake. It doesn't exist. If someone tells you that, tell them to show you where that is in the Constitution, because it's not. So our U.S. Supreme Court basically overturned that fake doctrine and said, look, a child just can't be coerced, right? So they still can't, that's part of it. So if there was something going on that the student didn't support, like a satanic, you cannot be coerced to do anything. So that's really the protection there. But at the end of the day, I'm going to trust parents to do what's right. This is about them. Government shouldn't decide for moms and dads. That's why I passed the chaplains bill, right? Because the schools can set their own standards. They can do that. It's totally up to them to set what the standard is. And that parents have to sign a consent, agreement and all kind of things to make sure that the children that are participating in these programs are choosing to do so. Their own will. No.
I've heard it's still in the court about local officers being able to apprehend illegals, SB 4.
Yes.
What's your status there? And then also talk about the possibility of hiring more DPS officers, especially here in Central Texas and things, because we lost a lot of our officers down to the border.
We did, yeah, and the surge. When we surged down at the border with Operation Lone Star, I don't know if y'all noticed, there were a lot less DPS troopers on the highway. We've all noticed it around the state. Hopefully very soon that surge can come to an end where we can get our state troopers back and we can get them back to each region that they're normally assigned to, because this has been a long 4 years that we've had to pick up the slack. Because if not us, who, right? No one's happy that we're having to spend the money to do this and the sacrifices people are having to make to do it. But if not us, who? It was up to us. And SB 4 is still tied up in the courts, but you know what SB 4 is modeled after? The federal law that they're supposed to be enforcing, right? It's the ICE detainer. Probable cause, can't demonstrate that you're here legally, return to country of origin. If you don't, increased felony and criminal penalty. That's what the federal law is supposed to look like when it's enforced. So I think come January, that's about to be enforced. And it's very good, of course, to have a state law on the books too, but God willing, they'll start doing their job and we're going to be able to stop doing it for them, and also not at our expense anymore, which was, huge cost to the taxpayer of this great state. $3 billion is what we spent this past session alone, right? You can see that that's not sustainable. And look, thank God we can't print money in Texas. We also cannot issue debt. So that's coming out of the surplus, right? There's something that we don't have either in savings or something we're not able to spend anymore, which, the spending, I'm fiscally responsible. I'm more worried about the savings that should be refunded to you. So, those numbers got really big, unfortunately. We all saw the consequences of this, and I'm convinced that's why the Rio Grande Valley voted for Trump, because of that. The Rio Grande Valley was red. Cameron, Hidalgo, even Webb County, one of the largest counties anywhere, voted for Trump this last election. I did not see that coming, but my goodness, what a huge win we had there.
Glad to see you in this setting, and just a couple of questions for you. Last session, there were a couple of major initiatives with education, 2 bills that were moving at the start. One of them stalled out, you mentioned it earlier, which is the school choice. The other one was to take care of the teachers, and that was moving ahead just fine.
Right.
And then school choice got attached to it, and that pretty much ended that. Is there any discussion or thought about going back and trying to help the teachers out this session?
Yes, absolutely. We want to help our teachers. And look, at the end of the day, school choice wasn't attached to it. It was all together, right? Because, we're legislating for public school, for private school, for homeschool, for all the kids of this great state, not just the 5.4 million that are in our public schools right now. And we had a massive teacher pay raise in there. And unfortunately, TASB, and your tax dollars and taxpayer-funded lobbying lobbied against that. And I kept telling them, look, they said it defunded schools. It didn't do anything of the sort like that. We kept our public schools fully funded, and we're putting in another $7 billion in that school choice bill. I think it was about $5 billion in the House, or $7 billion in the House, $5 billion in the Senate. And look, the school choice component was $500 million. Okay, well, when you divide that, that's like $90 a student. And we're spending, before that bill, before the school choice bill, about $93.6 billion. That's a half of 1%. A half of 1% is not defunding anybody. And it was wrong that they lobbied against that. And honestly, the taxpayer-funded lobby groups that lobbied against it need a lesson in remedial math. They couldn't seem to do math, you know. And that was unfortunate that they lobbied against that and held it hostage, because a rising tide can lift all boats. It's not either or. Because you're for parents and choice doesn't mean you're against public education. It doesn't. We can do both. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. And I think we had a solution to do that, and it was really unfortunate that we had, 20-something Republicans in the House vote no and kill that. But the good news is they're mostly not coming back. A few of them are, but not enough to cause that bill to fail. So we'll pass it, school choice next time, and we'll be able to take care of everybody, our teachers, our students, our public schools, and make sure that we provide those resources needed for better academic outcomes for everybody. And teachers do deserve a pay raise. They do.
Senator Middleton, a couple of things. One is, as we're focusing on the whole immigration crisis, I hope that we as a party are going to keep the tent wide. I mean, the reality is that President Trump is there because of an unbelievable shift in minority voting, and that's going to be a hard thing for us to do, but one that obviously seems to be important. The question I really have is about if you look at the map, America is fundamentally conservative. American cities are not. And in Texas, we certainly see that. You've got South Houston, and Houston is a bastion of liberalism, as is Dallas, and Austin, says, "Hold my beer." How do we as a party try to, chip away at those edges? Where are those sort of marginal cities? And by that I mean the ones that are still blue, but not nearly as blue as they once were. How do we concentrate our attention and our efforts on those things, while at the same time maintaining the foothold, the strong foothold we have? And Bastrop is really facing that in a huge way because of, among other things, the influx of employees to companies like this one, and the massive influx that we have from Austin and from the left coast. Not our friends who came from California, who came to be conservative, but those who came for jobs. So I just don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I think we showed on election night that we are the party of common sense, right? It's common sense to want a secure border. It's common sense to say there's just man and woman. It's common sense to say a man shouldn't play women's sports. It's common sense to say, yes, a child should not be gender mutilated. It's common sense to say we want fair elections. It's common sense to say we're going to stand up for our energy independence in this state. So I think it comes down to that. We are the party of common sense. We're the party that's not going to raise your property taxes out of control. We're the party that's not going to create a state income tax or wealth tax like they're doing in California. We're also the law and order party. We believe in public safety because, look, if we don't have public safety, you can't experience those God-granted freedoms, because someone's going to take your life, someone's going to take your liberty, and someone's going to take your property. And what we saw with the BLM protests and everything that happened in 2020 and defund the police is the Republican Party is the only party that will fight to keep your family and your children safe. But there's one other thing y'all have noticed, the George Soros money that's pouring in, the New York and California money that's pouring into this state. I remember in 2018, we looked at it. That was when we lost 12 Republican state reps in the House. It was a bad year for Republicans. We lost one here locally, I think. Close to here, is it Tony Dale maybe or somebody? But it was 12. And we looked at it, and the Democrats that beat them, like 80 to 90% of their money was from out of state. Wasn't from in Texas. So I'm really tired of the left coast and George Soros telling us who to elect here in Texas. So next session, I'm going to file the bill to cap out-of-state political donations and stop this. He does not deserve influence in our elections. In fact, he means harm to this state and this country, so we need to make sure that we do that, and make sure Texans are electing Texans, also funding their campaigns. So.
Great. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I want to come back to the speaker race. I know you're a senator and not in the Texas House, although you were. But what we've seen is, and what Dan Patrick has been leading on, is that all the good work the Senate does gets destroyed in the Texas House under current leadership, right? So, and what Dan Patrick is definitely taking a side in this speaker race that's going on right now. And I'm trying to get involved to make sure we have a House that will work with the Senate and actually deliver on the priorities of the Republican Party. And there's an angle on that I wanted to hit you with. I have heard rumors that the reason why John Bryant, the Democrat who's stepped into the speaker race, the reason why he's doing that is he's taking a coalition of Democrats to Dade Phelan. Everybody knows that Dade Phelan is going to have to take to win the speakership, is going to have to do it with a few betrayers of the Republican Party in the House with Democrats. And John Bryant has gone, and what the rumor is that the negotiation tactic they're saying is, Dade, we're only going to vote for you if you promise you're going to kill school choice. Okay? Now, the reason why I bring that up is because there's two people that can take it over the top in the speaker race. There's Governor Abbott, and there's Donald Trump. But either one of those, and maybe both. If we get both of those people coming in and at least making statements, and the governor making phone calls, we can flip this thing. And I wanted to see if you think that rumor, if it's true, could bring Governor Abbott in on the side of the reform and against Dade when he's been hesitant to do so in the past.
You know, I hadn't heard that rumor. That's interesting, but a little background on kind of how that's happened in the past. Y'all remember Joe Strauss? That's how he got elected. It was, I think, eight or nine Republicans. They got together. We got close in an election one time. I think we were within like maybe seven, but like I think it was 80 or 81 Republicans, something like that. And so they had enough, realized that, hey, if the 7 or 8 most liberal Republicans align with all the Democrats, we can pick the speaker. And they did. They got rid of Tom Craddock, and that's how they got Joe Strauss in there that time. But the thing people have to live by, and this is the thing that I signed a pledge for when I was in the House, and everyone should pledge to do, only Republicans should pick the Republican candidate for speaker, just like in the U.S. House. The Democrats can vote no if they want, that's fine. But only Republicans should pick the Republican candidate for speaker. And we have rules on that, both in the RPT platform and also the Texas House bylaws. The caucus bylaws say that you've got to support the Republican choice for speaker. And if you're coming to the table with all Democrats and a handful of Republicans, you've already broken that rule. So that's the number one thing to ask, is you've got to make sure that every Republican state representative lives up to that December 7th vote, because that's the caucus vote. This December the 7th is when they meet to pick the Republican candidate for speaker. And I had so many bills die last session. The prayer and public school bill died. School choice died. My ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying died. I had a bill that you saw in Harris County where they shorted ballot paper. I said, if you short ballot paper, you got to call a new election. That died. You know, Lois Colcourse bill on no China. China can't buy our land. Hostile nations cannot buy our property. That died over there. All sorts of legislation like that we all believe in, we all fought for, we all elected our Republican majority to do that, right? And to get that job done, and also pass our 8 Republican Party, their 8 RPT legislative priorities. There's actually one more I forgot to mention that I'm about to file, the ban on kill switches. I don't know if y'all know. I know you know that. Joe Biden had a plan to be able to turn your vehicle off. I know, it's dystopian, it's 1984 kind of stuff, but you know, these are the things that we expect should be easy, right? This should be easy. This is not that hard, right? We work for you. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We don't work for the lobbyists. We don't work for the Democrats. We don't represent government. The rights are vested in you. Rights are vested in our constituents that own our district. There's no free speech rights that belong to government. All rights belong to the people, and people forget about that all the time, unfortunately. So it's a little reminder. This election was a reminder of that, but it's important that you remind everyone in elected office of the same thing. You know, I mean, this is a real problem, especially with how the House has dysfunctioned for the last several years. And they got a Democrat parliamentarian, Hugh Brady, the guy that's killing a lot of these bills, worked for Obama. He worked for Barack Obama. His lawyer for Barack Obama. And that law firm, Brady Peavy, we still can't get information out of the city of Austin over that. They also represented the city of Austin, Brady Peavy, and one of the things that the city hired them to do was to look for points of order to kill conservative bills. Wow. Now, you're telling me that there's no communication between his old law firm and the parliamentarian? I don't think so. No.
Senator, thank you for being here tonight. The first time I heard about weaknesses to the Texas electric grid was back in 2011 when I heard a briefing on it. I was pretty appalled about the weaknesses specifically to EMPs, GMPs, cyber concerns at that time, and here we are over a decade later, and I feel like we're still at the same spot. Many in this room have heard or watched the movie that Senator Bob Hall had produced, Grid Up, Power Down, and and some very good points were made in that. The last time his bill came before the committee, you were on the committee, and I watched the hearing for that committee, and you asked a very good question. You know, if we secure the grid and we do all of the things that we need to protect the grid, is your refrigerator in your house going to work? And that's a very good question, right? So I feel like we have this chicken or egg scenario where we need to do something and we need to provide some protection. I don't know if it starts with appliances within a home and some legislation there, or if we start with the grid overall. But I'd like your perspective on, you know, how do we get some effective change so if something happens, if we're attacked, that Texans will still continue to have electricity.
Right, and we definitely need to stay outside of the federal grid, right? I mean, that number one. We don't need to be connecting and held hostage to whatever's happening with the federal regulations and control. So we need to have ERCOT separate. But I have joint authored Senator Hall's bill that he's either already filed it or is about to file it on grid protection. What I meant in committee is that we need to do both. We need to make sure we have enough power generation. We also need to make sure we secure the grid from attacks, right? Because as we've seen, you know, these data centers and Bitcoin miners are getting built everywhere. And honestly, we don't have enough power to keep up with that demand. And one of the reasons why it's becoming more unreliable is because of the unreliable sources of power generation like wind and solar that we've got too much of right now, right? That was a lot of the reason for the February 2021 problem, is after that cold front came through, there was no wind, and then it was cloudy in a lot of Texas. So what does that mean? Solar and windmills aren't turning. Wind turbines aren't producing power. So we got to make sure we have more dispatchable, reliable, thermal power generation, and at the same time, secure our grid from foreign threats and adversaries, because they absolutely do mean us harm. And I am really concerned about that black start situation, like is in that movie, and Senator Hall talks about a lot. I mean, that would be devastating, weeks without power, maybe longer. So we got to make sure that our grid is secured and that we also have enough power generation for our grid as well, and that it's reliable. Because by the way, you hear a lot about the battery side of it, but for power storage, because it's not generation, batteries don't generate any power. Power storage, when you're discharging those batteries that you see, they have those as backup. These aren't the ones in your homes. These are like the battery farms that they connect to the solar farms and the wind farms. 4-hour runtime is the best you can do. I'm like, well, we just had Hurricane Beryl come through the Texas Gulf Coast, and a lot of us didn't have power for a week. So, I don't know if we can go to the hospital and say, which 4 hours do you want power? Or Sheriff's Department, which 4 hours do you want power? Or, that's not going to work too well. We need it when we need it, right? And it needs to be dispatchable and reliable. It does work to smooth the curves out so we don't hit those high price spikes, but it's not really there for like the winter storm situation or a hurricane or things like that. So
And thank you.
No.
Can we have a round of applause, please? That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
I think those are the questions.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming out tonight. I'm sorry I was a little late.
Don't
God
leave.
bless you and all you do for our great state and these patriots here tonight. Thank you.
Don't leave yet.
No.
And I had this really cool boom mic, but since Senator Middleton wanted to use the handheld, I guess I should too, right? Susan Lucas, you have a couple words you wanted to share with us. Susan is our SREC rep, and she has some words she'd like to share.
Thank you. Howdy. I wanted to bring a message to you tonight because we would like to see every one of you in the halls of the Capitol on December the 7th. The vote in the caucus, the House caucus, will occur on the 7th. Right now, they're working toward getting 53. If they get 53, that will be the threshold that the rules in the House would require the House to vote together on the floor in January. And right now, we don't have 53. What is desired is that that everyone put pressure on the representatives who have not signed to vote on the 7th to vote for the minority non-felon candidate, the majority non-felon candidate. And so we want people to put pressure on those representatives between now and then. But what we also want is we want that on December the 7th, the morning, that morning before the caucus, in the hallways in the Capitol, to fill up the hallways with Republicans in red shirts, preferably that says "Ban Democratic Chairs" on the shirt, and so that when they are trying to get into the caucus room on that morning, that all they're seeing is red shirts, and to help try to influence the caucus. He has not agreed to vote with the caucus.